The autumn air over Eastern Europe was thick with tension, a sense of unease settling over the borderlands as the world watched with apprehension. Russia and Belarus launched Zapad 2025, a massive military exercise that drew the eyes of the globe. For 5 days, tanks rumbled across muddy fields and jets roared overhead, ostensibly defensive drills, but in reality a chilling rehearsal for something far more ominous. This was the first Zapad since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the stakes had never been higher. The world was witnessing a new level of brinkmanship. The exercises now included open simulations of nuclear attacks, a taboo shattered, as the specter of nuclear war was brought out of the shadows and into the open. Belarusian General Pavel Muraveiko confirmed the drills involved planning for non-strategic nuclear weapon use, a move that sent shockwaves through European capitals. In 2023, Russia had already moved tactical nukes onto Belarusian soil, redrawing Europe's strategic map and raising the stakes for any potential conflict. By late 2024, Moscow and Minsk signed a pact. Russia would defend Belarus, even with nuclear arms if necessary, binding their fates closer than ever before. Zapad 2025 was the culmination, a demonstration of intent, not just readiness, and a signal to the world that the rules had changed. The message was clear. Russia's nuclear threats were now operational plans practiced by soldiers on the ground, no longer just words or empty warnings. The simulation of a nuclear strike was designed to intimidate NATO, to instill fear and hesitation. The drills targeted Warsaw, Vilnius, Berlin, Brussels, and even Washington, reminding the West that no capital was beyond reach. The Kremlin wanted the world to know its threats were real, its willingness to cross old lines absolute, and its resolve unshaken. The continent was being plunged into a new, dangerous era of confrontation, where the specter of nuclear conflict loomed larger than it had in decades. The unthinkable was now part of the playbook, and the world could only watch, uncertain of what the next move might be. A new and formidable weapon loomed over Zapad 2025, the Oreshnik hypersonic missile system, a technological leap that sent shockwaves through military circles across Europe. Traveling at blistering speeds that easily defeat conventional air defenses, Oreshnik had already demonstrated its devastating power on the Ukrainian battlefield, leaving little doubt about its effectiveness. Now it was the undeniable centerpiece of war games staged right on NATO's border, a clear and deliberate signal of its immense strategic value and the shifting balance of power. Belarus's President Lukashenko publicly requested the permanent deployment of Oreshnik, citing what he called growing threats from Poland, Lithuania, and Germany, and stoking regional tensions. If stationed in Belarus, Oreshnik could strike European capitals in mere minutes, leaving almost no time for response or evacuation, and putting millions at risk. Hypersonic weapons like this are engineered to paralyze decision-makers, making retaliation or interception nearly impossible and rendering traditional defense systems obsolete. For NATO, Oreshnik is a nightmare scenario. Existing defenses are outdated and largely ineffective against such unprecedented speed and maneuverability. The Zapad exercises became a live-fire showcase for this new weapon, amplifying Russia's nuclear threats and sending a chilling message to the West. Lukashenko's request was not for defense, but for an unmistakable offensive edge, signaling a willingness to escalate. The message was clear. Russia and Belarus now possess a weapon the West cannot currently stop, shifting the calculus of deterrence. The strategic balance in Europe had shifted overnight, forcing leaders to confront a new era of vulnerability and uncertainty. The age of hypersonic brinkmanship had arrived, ushering in a dangerous chapter for the continent and the world. Zapad 2025 was notably smaller than in previous years, fielding just 13 to 30,000 troops, a significant reduction that reflected the toll of the ongoing Ukraine war on Russia's military resources and manpower. This downsizing was a clear sign of Russia's armed forces being stretched thin by the relentless conflict in Ukraine, with much of its equipment and personnel committed to the front lines. Yet, despite the reduced scale, the political symbolism of the exercises was more potent than ever before, sending a message that transcended mere numbers. The Russia-Belarus Union State was joined by a handful of foreign troops, including 65 from India, a pointed gesture, especially in the wake of new U.S. tariffs and growing tensions with the West. Iran, Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Congo, and Mali also sent contingents, their participation signaling a willingness to align with Moscow's vision and challenge Western dominance. For Russia, this was more than a military exercise. It was a propaganda victory, a carefully staged show of international support in the face of Western attempts at isolation. The exercises were about more than just military integration. They were about forging a new axis of confrontation, uniting countries with shared grievances and ambitions. Each nation had its own reasons for joining, ranging from economic frustrations and anti-Western sentiment to calculated strategic interests and the pursuit of new alliances. Zapad became a platform for this emerging bloc, a military manifestation of a broader political project that seeks to reshape the global balance of power. The drills were not just about preparing for battle with NATO, but about building a coalition capable of challenging the Western-led order on multiple fronts. The gathering was a statement to the world. Russia is not isolated, and it can still rally partners to its cause. The world is dividing into rival camps, with new alliances forming and old ones being tested in the crucible of conflict. The war games served as a rehearsal not only for military engagement, but also for the political confrontations that lie ahead. On the training grounds of Belarus, the contours of a new Cold War were unmistakably taking shape, signaling a turbulent era to come. For Poland, Zapad is never just a drill. It's a direct threat. The echoes of war games are felt in Warsaw and along the eastern border. Russia's invasion of Ukraine confirmed Poland's worst fears. As Zapad simulated nuclear strikes and hypersonic attacks, Poland saw a rehearsal for an assault on its sovereignty. Poland responded by deploying over 3,000 troops to the Suwalki Gap, NATO's eastern linchpin. Tensions peaked when Russian drones crossed into Polish airspace, triggering a scramble of Polish and Dutch jets. The incident underscored how easily war games could spark real conflict. In response, Poland sealed its border with Belarus, closing all crossings. The move was both defensive and symbolic. The border was now a front line in a hybrid war. The closure aimed to prevent further provocations and state-sponsored crises. For Poland, Zapad 2025 was the final straw. The new Iron Curtain had descended in Eastern Europe. The stakes had never been higher. NATO watched Zapad 2025 with alarm, seeing it as a calculated act of intimidation. The alliance shifted from observation to active deterrence, launching its own exercises, like Tarasis in the Baltics. Skies over Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania filled with NATO aircraft sending a clear message: we are ready. The drone incursion into Poland triggered a unified response, with Dutch F-35s joining Polish jets. This was Article 5 in action. An attack on one is an attack on all. The drills forced NATO to confront the new security reality: hybrid warfare, hypersonic threats, and nuclear coercion. The alliance had to balance strength with restraint, avoiding escalation. Every move was a high-stakes dance on the edge of crisis. The security of Europe now hung in the balance. The old rules no longer applied. The Suwalki Gap, NATO's most vulnerable corridor, was the unspoken focus of Zapad 2025. This narrow strip links Poland and Lithuania, flanked by Russian Kaliningrad and Belarus. If severed, the Baltic states would be isolated from NATO. The drills simulated rapid deployments and pincer movements to close the gap. Over 3,000 Polish troops were deployed in direct response. Kaliningrad's military might, missiles, fleets, air defenses loomed over the region. The exercises rehearsed the nightmare scenario, cutting off the Baltics and turning the Baltic Sea into a Russian lake. Any miscalculation here could spiral into full-scale war. The Suwalki Gap is now the primary fault line in Europe's new Cold War. Defending it is existential for NATO. In a show of transparency, Belarus invited foreign observers, including from NATO, to Zapad 2025. Carefully staged footage showed U.S. officers shaking hands with Belarusian officials, even as nuclear simulations took place elsewhere. This was political theater, not genuine openness. Observers were shown only what their hosts wanted: sanitized briefings, scripted maneuvers. The real action, nuclear drills, hypersonic missile tests, remained hidden. The invitation was a propaganda move, designed to muddy the waters and claim legitimacy. It was psychological warfare, using the West's own values against it. The presence of American officers was co-opted for Kremlin messaging. The reality, the regime's cynicism about trust and openness, was on full display. The transparency revealed more about deception than about the drills themselves. The war in Ukraine transformed Zapad 2025 into a laboratory for modern warfare. Russian troops brought hard-won experience, urban combat, attrition, and drone tactics, to Belarus. Drones dominated the exercises, used for reconnaissance, strikes, and swarming attacks. Scenarios included both offensive drone swarms and defensive countermeasures. Urban warfare was central drills, simulated attacks on cities, and countering resistance movements. The focus was not just on invasion, but on occupation and subjugation. Lessons from Ukraine were clear. Victory means breaking a population's will. Zapad was a rehearsal for the most brutal forms of modern conflict. The future battlefield had arrived on NATO's doorstep. As the tanks withdrew, the legacy of Zapad 25 remained. Nuclear attack simulations, once unthinkable, are now mainstream in Russian doctrine. Europe is split into two armed, distrustful blocs, Russia and its allies versus a rearming NATO. Poland's sealed border is the new Iron Curtain, a symbol of confrontation, not ideology. The Oreshnik hypersonic missile has permanently altered the strategic balance, raising the risk of preemptive action. The exercises unveiled a future of instability, nuclear threats, and hybrid warfare. The war games are over, but the confrontation is not. The Kremlin has declared its existential struggle with the West. The echoes of Zapad 25 will shape Europe's security for years to come.